Good evening, everyone. It is my pleasure to welcome you to our second LIZKOR event, made very meaningful because today is International Holocaust Remembrance Day. LIZKOR is a TBA, Temple Beth Am project, whose mission is to honor and hear the stories of those in our community who have personally experienced the Shoah, the Holocaust, and whose families may have had family history that included Shoah experiences. LIZKOR means to remember, and our mission is to hear stories firsthand and to educate the third and future generations. Tonight's program will be that kind of experience. As we get started, I should like to acknowledge and thank the many people who have made this evening a reality. To our devoted clergy, Rabbi Sam Blumberg and Cantor David Wolff, Carol Hanover, who is TBA president, who blessed the project and helped us move it forward, and to an amazing and very committed committee of Temple members. I would also like to thank Lillian Fox and the help and sponsorship of Facing History and Ourselves. They understood and championed LIZKOR right from the start. And as you know, it takes a village to make these things happen. And we are so grateful to have one. And so now to start the program, I should like to ask Rabbi Blumberg to offer a prayer.
Thank you so much, Ellie. And thank you to all of you who are here with us this evening as we have this evening of bearing witness to our guest Rena Finder's story of survival during the Holocaust. As Ellie mentioned, today, January 27th, is International Holocaust Remembrance Day, which was established in 2005 by the United Nations General Assembly with two goals. One, to honor the 6 million Jewish victims of the Holocaust and the millions of other victims of Nazism. And two, to encourage Holocaust education in order to help prevent future acts of genocide. This day was not chosen at random. Today is the 77th anniversary of the liberation of the camps at Auschwitz-Birkenau, a place of cruelty, hatred, destruction, and death. Tonight, at the close of International Holocaust Remembrance Day, and before we hear the remarkable story of our special guest, Rena Finder, I offer a blessing for bearing witness. In the Torah scroll, in the book of Deuteronomy, where we find the central Jewish prayer of the Shema, which affirms God's oneness. It says, "Hear, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one." We find in the Shema, when it's written in the Torah scroll, that the letter Ayin at the end of that first word, Shema, and the letter Dalet at the end of the last word, Echad, one. Those letters, Ayin and Dalet, are written enlarged in every single Torah scroll. Put together, these letters, Ayin, Dalet, spell Aid, the Hebrew word for witness. That the word witness bookends one of our most sacred prayers teaches us that listening, witnessing is a sacred act. Hearing someone tell their story is powerful. It can and should change us and spur us to action. When we bear witness to someone else's life experience, we affirm the oneness of God, the sanctity of human life, and the holy spark, the divinity that is found in every human being. Tonight, we light this candle in honor of all those who had stories to tell, those whose lives were cut short and could not tell their own stories, and those survivors who with courage and bravery have stood up to share of themselves, that we might learn, bear witness, educate, and to commit that we will never forget. Blessed are you, God, who enables us to bear witness, to remember LIZKOR, and to honor. And now, by way of introduction to Rena and her incredible story, we share this video from Facing History and Ourselves of Rena telling about her life before the Holocaust.
My name is Rena Finder, and I was born in Krakow, Poland, and I'm a survivor because I was on Schindler's list. I survived with my mother, and because of Oskar Schindler, I was able to grow up, have a life, get married, have children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, because Oskar Schindler. Well, the first 10 years of my life were wonderful. I am an only child, and my mom was one of 7 siblings. My father was one of 8 siblings. So I was surrounded by family, aunts and uncles, grandparents, cousins. I learned how to read very early in life because I loved the books. And I remember especially one evening my mom went to visit her parents who lived right around the corner from our house. And I remember sitting, I still see myself sitting at this little round table with the candles on and reading a book, the fairy tales by the Grimm's brothers. Every Sunday morning, either my father would take me places. I remember my father taking me to the zoo. I remember one of my aunts and uncles took me to see a movie. There was a special theater in Krakow that every Sunday morning had plays for children. Krakow was a beautiful and still is a beautiful city, and all my pre-war memories are just full of fun and good things that were happening to me personally. I was not aware of anti-Semitism at that time, even though I heard people talk about. But basically, my parents spoke Yiddish to each other when they didn't want me to understand.
Thank you. And now Ellie will introduce Rena.
I was very happy to see that video. I hope you enjoyed it. But now we have a special pleasure. I get to introduce Rena to you all in person. After coming to America, Rena has dedicated her life to telling about the Holocaust and about Oskar Schindler and her part in being able to create something new in America. She is and has always been especially dedicated to telling the story to young people and keeping hope alive. And of course, I hope many of you have read Rena's book. It's a wonderful read, and I would recommend it. I'm not selling it, I'm just recommending it. My great joy in inviting Rena to join us and continue the story of her life. Rena, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for inviting me to be part of your wonderful idea about reminding so many people that there are things that have to be talked about, must not be forgotten, especially with young children who don't and never heard about the Holocaust. I came across somebody, quite a grown-up person, and when I showed him a picture of Steven Spielberg and asked him if he knew who it was, he said no. I was very much surprised because thanks to Steven Spielberg, the name of Oskar Schindler will never be forgotten. As for the survivors from Oskar Schindler, he certainly will live forever. Of course, the number of the survivors is shrinking with each day. But it's so important that the world will know that there was a way to help, but the world stood by and did nothing. It wasn't worth it. It was only the Jews. And that's why it's so important for me when I'm in school to make the children aware that not everybody has one religion and not everybody is going to be strong and not everybody has one religion or is one color. And yet we are all the same under the skin. We are human beings. And as the kids grow up, they have more power. They can do more to make people aware, to help those who need help, even when they are in college, or especially when they're in college, they have more power. And I hope that because Facing History can reach to many schools, many colleges, and I have been lucky enough to be able to go to very many schools. And I hope that the story of Oskar Schindler will live on forever when those of us who survived will not be here anymore.
Thank you so much, Rena. Rena, I wonder if you might be open to sharing a little bit more about Oskar Schindler and what he means to you and your family, and perhaps a little bit about your personal story.
The fact that my mom and I, by that time, my father was already taken to Auschwitz. But we were lucky enough that we knew somebody who was in charge of sending co-workers to Oskar Schindler factory. And this is what saved our lives. Because if it was not for Oskar Schindler, none of us would have survived. There were over 300 people, men and women, who were sent to Auschwitz from the camp in Poland, in Plaszów, right, in Krakow. And we were lucky enough to be sent to go and work for Oskar Schindler, especially for somebody like me, because at that time I was probably maybe 15 years old, not even that, I think I was younger. Being with Oskar Schindler and being with my mother, we both survived. There is no way we would have survived if we were not with Oskar Schindler. He really gave his life and all his money to help us. After the war, he was a poor man. And it was those of us who survived, and of course a lot of Israelis who were helping to keep him alive. Unfortunately, he died young. But he will never be forgotten. when you go to Israel, the first thing you ever do, you go to the memorial, to the cemetery where he is buried. Because if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't be here. And so many, of course, it's so late in life. We are all getting older. And there are less and less of those who survived because of Oskar Schindler. And his wife. It's not enough written, so that she did write a book, and I'm hoping that it can be found, because she was helping young people like myself and people who were sick. She was the one that was trying to get extra food for us, while he tried to bribe more and more soldiers not to kill us, to let us live. I hope that the world will never, never forget about Oskar Schindler. It frightens me a bit because there are so very few of us left. Every day we are all getting older, and every day I get a letter or a call about one of the survivors of Oskar Schindler who passed away. I want people to remember, and especially young children. I want for them to learn that they too can make a difference in life. They can stand up and speak up when they see somebody being nasty to a friend. Don't just stand there and do nothing. There is always something one can do. Just stand up and talk. And I hope that message is going to live on, because the kids will remember it and they will take pride in it. There will be less fighting and more being friends, especially in the schools where there are very few Black children. It's very important for the kids to know that the color doesn't matter. It's your heart and your behavior that matters. We absolutely cannot allow anybody to hurt somebody else because of different religion or different color. And I hope that will happen while I'm still around.
Thank you. Rena, are you up for another question or two?
Sure.
I know that in your book and throughout your teaching and speaking, you talk so much about being an upstander versus being a bystander. And from what I understand, that what your experience growing up was to see many, many bystanders, people who just looked on and thought they could not make a difference. And Oskar Schindler is a shining example of what it means to be an upstander. I wonder where you see glimmers of hope, where you see people standing up as upstanders in our world today.
I get a lot of hope when I speak in schools, and for the children who had heard me when they were in school in the lower grades and are now in colleges, that they still remember what I said about stand up and make sure that you do the right thing for somebody who is innocent and needs help. I think that the letters I get now that the schools are over and I no longer teach because of all the sicknesses around, people do believe in it and people want to hear about it. And that's why I hope that life will go on and bad things will never happen again. Or there will be enough people who will make sure that nothing bad happens again.
Rena, what would you say to families with children who might be apprehensive to teach about the Shoah, to teach about the Holocaust and the horrors that happened, who say, I'm just not sure that I want my kids to learn about this, that this is something that's appropriate for them. Do you encounter that ever? And what do you say to families who feel that maybe children aren't ready at whatever age?
I'm glad you asked, because only yesterday I was thinking about the beginning of facing history in ourselves. And I remember being in a corridor of a school in Brighton or Brooklyn, whichever way, and having a teacher and myself as a speaker and a mother of a child in that classroom. It was I think they were maybe fourth graders. And I remember the mother said, I don't think I want my child to learn about it. And of course, I remember standing up and trying to explain to her that this is something everybody should know about, not forget about it. And it never happened again. It never happened again. Those of us who spoke for facing history were always welcome by the teachers and then by the students. I am still in touch with students who are by now almost 40 years old and who still send me cards on holidays. Some of them are still teachers and still teach. Some of them are retiring. But facing history and ourselves was the beginning. It was until then, I remember it was very difficult sometimes because the teachers were afraid. But that passed, things have changed. Many people, of course, are no longer with us, but also there are those of us who started, and we will finish it. We will not let it die.
Thank you so much, Rena. Thank you for sharing of your story so beautifully. We know that you are so grateful, and we are so grateful to Facing History and ourselves for their support of Holocaust and genocide education, and educating on the themes and the messages of hatred and prejudice, and helping to ensure that the horrors of the Holocaust are learned from and don't happen again. Rena, do you have any final words you'd like to share with us this evening before, and just so that everybody else knows, after Rena shares, we'll be sharing another video from Facing History and ourselves, and we'll have a few moments of reflection as well. But Rena, is there anything else you'd like to share?
The one thing that I feel very strongly about is that when the teacher should start teach about the Holocaust, and then ask the speakers to come and talk to the school. So I am used to coming to a school where they would have almost the whole school in the room. And I can speak to a lot of children who now, of course, are grown-ups. And I have to tell you, I got a lot of holiday cards from some of the used to be kids who are now teachers and teach about the Holocaust.
That's remarkable, Rena. It sounds like you've had such an incredible impression, left such an incredible impression on children in your sharing of your story over the years. And we're so grateful for your bravery in sharing, again, for putting your experience into words in your book, your memoir that was published a few years ago, My Survival, A Girl on Schindler's List, which we highly, highly recommend. It's a really fascinating story of your experience. So thank you so much, Rena, for being with us. We'd love to have the opportunity for folks who are with us, if you'd like to just take a moment to put your words of gratitude to Rena into the chat. We would appreciate that. And Rena, we'll make sure that you get a transcript of the chat afterwards so that you can see the thanks that are being entered into the chat. Thank you, Rena. And as I said, we'll make sure to share that transcript with you. People are putting into the chat that we're so honored to have you here and to have you with us, and to carry on your legacy and to have you share your important story with the world, with our youth. And we thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
So we'll continue now as we share another video of Rena sharing her reflections on Oskar Schindler. And then we'll have an opportunity to do a little bit of reflection together.
Oskar Schindler was an upstander. His workers were not what the Germans called worse human beings, were worse than the rats and cockroaches. To Oskar Schindler, we were people. While we were sent to the ghetto, there were people that worked for Oskar Schindler. And those people went to work every day and came back at night and told other people what a good man he was. Because in the beginning it was very hard to accept the fact that there was this tall, handsome Nazi with a gold diamond swastika on his lapels, that this was somebody that was going to be good, especially somebody who became very friendly with Amon Ged, who became who became in charge of Plaszow concentration camp. My mother heard that Oskar Schindler was hiring more women, especially. I remember we walked to the factory from Plaszow. I remember there he was, waiting for us with a smile. And not only with a smile, but with soup. See, we were never hungry working for Oskar Schindler. And we were not starving. He was using his own money to buy food. He talked to people. He made sure that we had small barracks and we actually had bunk beds. We actually had I remember we had an egg, maybe once a month. And I remember how we were beating up the egg and putting a little sugar in. We had sugar. And I remember that was, the best, the most wonderful thing. Or we had bread that actually sometimes we had margarine. And the soup always had some meat in it and vegetables. It was not like the soup in Plaszow. There was water with potato peels. So in Plaszow people were starving. Now I don't remember being starving. I remember being hungry. but again because of my father's extended family. One of my aunts worked in a kitchen. And I remember that I was going to the kitchen and she would give me food. What Oskar Schindler wanted when he opened the factory and was to become rich. That was his ambition. He wanted to have enough money to buy expensive clothes, expensive cars, expensive horses. Before all that, he was selling farm equipment. So he traveled to Krakow quite a lot. He traveled all over, but he wasn't making much money. And he didn't have a very happy marriage. He married somebody very much unlike him. Mrs. Schindler was a very quiet woman, very religious. And she certainly didn't appreciate his kind of life. But she cared for people, and Oskar Schindler cared for people. When he realized what was happening, then he was changing. He did not want to be part of it. He knew that for his workers were making him rich. He depended on his workers, and to him, the more Jewish people he applied, the more money he was making, because he only paid like 50 cents for a Jewish worker, where for a Polish worker he would have to pay $1. I mean, not $1, a zloty. And of course, Oskar Schindler had orders for the guards not to come into the camp and not to come into the factory. All they did was picking us up at the edge of the camp and walked behind us as we walked a few steps practically to the factory. And then every morning when he came, he always patted my hair. He said, "We Gates is, a little one." And to us, of course, we worshipped him. In Oskar Schindler's factory, in Oskar Schindler's camp, there were only 2 people that died. And they died by being taken care of in a hospital bed in the basement of the factory, taken care of by Mrs. Schindler. And the Schindlers arranged that those people, one was an older woman and one was a young girl who had cancer. And they arranged for them to be buried in a casket, which didn't happen to millions of others. In places, they were able to come after the war and move them to a Jewish cemetery in Prague. Oskar Schindler is an example that one person can make a difference. That there is always something you can do. Because everybody said there was nothing I could do. Yes, there is always something you can do.
We've been through a holy experience this evening, just in the last 25 minutes or so, to hear from Rena herself, to hear her story from these videos. And one of the purposes of a day like today, International Holocaust Remembrance Day, and any memory that we share of this time period, is to think about what we take with us, how we educate, how we bring our learning into our lives. And so we want to take a few moments of reflection this evening. And we're going to ask that you put into the chat. You can take a moment to collect your thoughts and think about what you've heard and seen this evening. But to put an image, a theme, a message from Rena's sharing of her story that resonates with you most. We want to know what will stay with you. thank you to all those who have put something into the chat that will stay with them, that they bring with them as we go into the world. As this evening's program itself, we're recording it, it becomes a living document, a part of our history, and something that we can preserve and share as part of LIZKOR's mission to honor our past for future generations. We'll share now one final video of Rena and her message to young people.
How do you want kids to make a bridge?
Well, I try to empower them. I try to tell them that they can change by being kind, that they can make their life easier by themselves if they get rid of the hate for somebody who is not the same color or doesn't believe in the same God. I say those are private things. And just because somebody doesn't believe in the same God or somebody is a different color, is still the same human being as you are. And if you want to have a better world for yourself and for your children, then it's up to you. There is a lot of things people can do to make life better if they only understood that they have the power to make things better.
A better world for ourselves and for our children. We have the power to make things better. Thank you so much to Rena and to her family for helping to make this evening possible, to Lillian Fox, who's also been instrumental in helping Rena to get here to be with us this evening, to Facing History and Ourselves. I know Ellie started with these thank yous, but I feel I need to say them again. To Facing History and Ourselves for their support, and to Ellie for all she's done for our LIZKOR initiative, and to everyone else who helps to publicize, to make this event, this program, a reality as we honor International Holocaust Remembrance Day as a community. And thank you to all of you for being here, for bearing holy witness tonight as we go out and we educate the next generation. We've been hearing a lot about upstanders this evening, those who stood up for others during the time of the Shoah, despite the grave risk to themselves and to their families. And so we hope that you'll join us on February 7th, that is Monday, February 7th at 6:45 p.m. on Zoom, as Temple Beth Am congregant George Klimas shares his story as a survivor and the heroic efforts of those who hid him and who, like Oskar Schindler, were awarded the special recognition of Righteous Among the Nations by Yad Vashem in Israel. The link for that program, which again is Monday, February 7th at 6:45 p.m. That link will be sent out early next week to all of those, anybody who registered for tonight's program. And now I'm going to send it over to Temple Beth Am's Cantor, David Wolff, who will introduce the musical piece that concludes our evening.
Thank you, Rabbi, and thank you so much to everyone here, and thank you so much to Rena Finder. I'm putting the text to our last part of our evening here in the chat. This is a text and a song of hope, of belief in a bright future, a future of peace where hatred has no place. It says, Ani ma'amin be'emunah shalema b'viat hamashiach. I believe with perfect faith. I believe with perfect faith in a bright messianic age when all will be reunited with their loved ones. This is a text from Maimonides, and it's a melody that was written during the Holocaust, and the melody survived, and it comes to us. Ani ma'amin, ani ma'amin, ani ma'amin, ani ma'amin. המשיח, בביאת המשיח אני מאמין. בביאת המשיח, בביאת המשיח אני מאמין. אני מאמין, אני מאמין, אני מאמין, אני מאמין.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Let us never forget. Good night.